glad that that was on your OBS and not mine because I felt like I was just
I, it,
messing up there.
yeah, I feel like such a derp because I, I, I had a feeling it was OBS because I've had that doubling effect before when my mic feeds in double, and then it turned out to be my OBS, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, for anybody watching right now, we just had a wonderful, fantastic tech moment that ended up being on Ember's end, not even on my end, which makes me feel better. I feel great about that. But first,
We.
yeah, hooray! Hooray for things going correctly. I'm gonna hit that theme song and then we're just gonna get going. All right. Ember, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, Sarai, Sarai. I'm excited to finally meet you.
Yes.
I've seen you around all over the place, and to get to actually chat is wonderful.
Yes, and I am so excited to meet you to show like to give you an idea of how impactful your montage video was where you were talking about YouTubers that you wish you'd known about earlier. My mom even watched it. And
Oh,
getting her to
nice.
watch a YouTube video is like I can't remember the last one she watched, and she even watched it. Was like, well, that was just lovely. That was just so. My mom is on your side. I know you don't know her, but just know that's a big deal. Um,
Well, glad to hear it.
and it's funny because I had just asked my audience. I said, if there are any creators you really like, you'd like to see on the show, who would you want to see? And your name came up actually more than once here on YouTube, and I think on Reddit or maybe it was Facebook. And so I went
Hmm.
to reach out to you to invite you to be a guest. And that's when I saw the notification that you had tagged me already. It was serendipitous.
Sometimes timing works.
Yeah, yeah, but enough about me. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you even get involved in this spot on YouTube, this atheism, agnosticism, secularism space?
Well, it's a little bit of a story, what's the word? Adventure, I
There
suppose.
we
Let's
go.
go with that. Yes.
Yeah.
So I I'd been watching science videos. I love
Okay.
science. Science is
Me
fantastic.
too.
And one of my favorite creators is Forrest Velkai. He's got so much energy and so much, bio knowledge and so forth.
Yes.
And once the algorithm figured out that I enjoyed Forrest's videos, it started recommending me shows like The Atheist Experience, which he sometimes guest hosts. And I'm like, oh, Forrest does more stuff. So I clicked and I'm like, what is this? So it opened up a whole new world. I didn't even realize there was an atheist agnostic YouTube out there. And then suddenly I'm watching, Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow and all these
Yes.
other wonderful creators. And I'm like, this is amazing. And then Matt left the ACA, and the ACA put out a call saying we need more hosts. We don't have enough people to man the boat. And I was like, I have all the equipment. I know how to do this. I can help
Yeah.
with this. So I
Yeah.
contacted them and I'm like, hey, throw my hat in the ring. And we went through the process for a while. And then we came to, well, we need to see how you are on camera. How do we do that? And so I created a channel. I'm like, look, I'll just be on camera and then you can see.
That's awesome. And how long ago was that?
December.
Wow, that's really so you've done all of that on your channel since December?
Hmm.
That's amazing. How often do you would if you had to guess, how often are you posting new content?
Um, it varies, unfortunately. I wish I had a more stable schedule, but at least I try to do at least two a week.
I was gonna say you've got tons out there, so I wouldn't feel bad at all if I were you. You've got so much content. I thought you for sure you were gonna say 3 years, and that was gonna check in my mind.
Mhm.
But that's awesome. And so, in your outside life, have you always been agnostic, atheist? Well, how do you identify, first of all, personally?
Probably the most accurate term would be igtheist. The concept of God as it's commonly described just doesn't even compute to me.
Got it. And have you always been that way, or were you raised in any church, or how did you come about deciding that for yourself?
Well, it was a another complicated adventure. I didn't really cling on to any particular beliefs when I was little. My parents mostly stayed out of it. They wanted the kids to be able to make their own decisions. But my grandmother lived with us, and
Wow.
she mostly raised us, at least until she moved into a home sometime around middle school, early high school. And she kept trying to bring me to church, and I was one of those little kids who kept asking questions, and then the pastors kept asking her to not bring me back again, which is the best way to handle small children, of
The
course.
best way. Oh, of course, the
Yes.
best way. And so what
Yeah.
kind of church was it? Do you remember the
Um,
denomination?
she was originally Catholic, but she went to every church in the area at some point or another, except the Mormons. We had Mormons right up the street. They were literally like two houses down. We never visited them. But
That's
yeah, pretty much everywhere else.
I'm surprised they didn't visit you. I feel like that's their
They
MO, isn't it?
They tried. I've actually, well, okay. So there was, I grew up on a farm. We had a whole bunch of animals. We had pigs and geese and peafowl and sheep and all kinds of things. And one day, I'm not positive whether it was Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, but some folks came up the driveway with their suits and their satchels and their books and their magazines and things. And the geese happened to be out, mowing the lawn as geese do, and
Oh.
they kind of blocked the driveway, and the lead person just kind of threw up his arms and said, "Children of God, part before me." And when he put his arms up, they put their wings up and charged, and so I
I was
never
gonna
got to
the minute you
find
said
out what
geese.
they were. Hmm.
Yes, the minute you said geese, I was like, "Oh, no. This is a very bird-centric channel. I know exactly how this is going." Yeah,
Hmm.
geese, I'm starting to kind of understand them as I get older a little bit better. When I was a kid, I thought they were all mean. The older I get, the more I'm like, "I see it." I wouldn't want people coming up and talking to me in public either. I don't blame them. If I'm eating a snack and you try to talk to me, I'm probably aggressive as well. But that's interesting. And so your parents, did they ever at any point like try to talk to you about any of this, especially when they knew that your grandma was trying to go to church or take you to church, or did that never just really come up with your family?
No, not really. I'm not actually sure if my parents knew that my grandmother kept trying to bring me to church.
Yeah, I
It
feel like
was,
grandmas could be sly like that.
yeah, it was. She could be very tricky, but she was constantly talking about God and Jesus and such. And when I'd ask her things like, normal children questions like, why do people die? Then I'd get a very Christian answer, but it wasn't very logical, so it never really stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um
And
it's
so
it,
what Oh, sorry. Did not mean
oh,
to
go
interrupt.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, so at what point did you start to? Because I know some people, they go through a period where they just don't really think about it at all. They just exist and they don't really go to church or anything. But at what point did you start to decide you to identify as, say, atheist? Was that later in life or earlier?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I didn't have the vocabulary for atheist until I think it was Pragmatic Crystal, who you've probably seen in your
Yes.
channel because she's everywhere.
Yes. She's in the
Put the
chat right
definition
now.
out there. Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that word either until about 6 months ago. I think I learned that word from interviewing Objectively Dan, if I remember correctly. But that's very cool, very cool. And so in your day-to-day life, is it a big part of your life at all, or is it just kind of if people happen to ask the right questions, that's how they find out that that's where you stand on things? I wasn't
In
sure if you lived in, like, a religious area.
moderate. I'm in Oswego, New York,
Okay.
near the southeastern end of Lake Ontario. It's a very, very red area, but the city
Mm.
is a college town, so it tends to be more blue-ish most of the time. We're one of those places that has more bars than churches.
Yeah, I like a place like that. I dig a place like that. And,
Yeah.
is that also where you were raised, or did you grew up in that area as well?
In the general region, yeah.
General, yeah.
I was born in Syracuse, and we've gradually been moving. Well, I've been moving more towards the lake. Every decade or so, I'll move a
And then
town over.
one day we just hear a splash. Ah,
Yes.
they made it. There they go.
Yep.
Interesting. And since you've been involved with different channels, oh, first of all, that you got to be a part of ACA after that, right?
No, actually.
I was gonna say I didn't actually ask if you got the job.
Yeah, I suspect it was some kind of oversight foobar or something like that. Um, because I also run a nonprofit organization in the area that's dedicated to advancing secularism and
That's so cool.
equality,
Hmm.
LGBT specifically. Um, they decided the best place to put me first to see how I did interacting with their community was on secular sexuality. And I was set to
Ah.
go on March 16th, and then they canceled the show on March 9th.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, I'm
No.
like,
Is
so
that
what
still like
now? And
something you'd be interested in being a part of at some point in the future, or has that ship sailed?
maybe I don't know. I haven't heard from anybody at the ACA except Christy. Christy Powell, the host of Secular Sexuality, actually came over to my channel for an interview on the Atheist live shows that I do, which are similar to yours, but I tend to I'm not sure how I describe them being different really, because I try to focus on the guest, how they got to where they are, what they believe now, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, had Christy on, and he and I are all good.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything from the ACA since.
You got ghosted. You hear that,
I
ACA?
did.
You
I
ghosted
did.
somebody. Well, is this with your channel and yeah, there you go. Exactly. Ghosted. I have too many birds in my house when I immediately thought there was like a bird behind you. Um, so I was like, oh, there's a budgie. So with your channel specifically, is this something that you hope to just kind of see where it goes? Is there a particular goal that you have for it? What are your goals for your dreams for your channel?
That's I try to stay flexible in my goals
Same,
because
same.
it's really hard with YouTube to predict anything with certainty. Mostly I try to I realize that there's more that can be done for building community, like, connecting other creators, which is, the video that you saw. Um, I feel like there's more that can be done in that regard. I
Yeah,
do spend a lot of time on counter apologetics. I really enjoy creating my own science content when the opportunity arises. But
yeah,
I feel like the biggest, most important thing is creating a more of a sense of community, another hub where community can exist, where people feel accepted, welcome, and
yeah.
you know feel like they're not alone. Because there's still a lot of places in the world where a non-believer might be the only one in their whole community.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't ever escape me that in some countries even this what we're doing right now would be illegal, which is
Mm.
bananas to me, which is just wild to me that, we could get thrown in jail for speaking out against religion or speaking out against God. And so I feel like that's important too, even though it's something that we kind of get to do anytime we want, anytime we set up a StreamYard link, but it doesn't escape me that people like you and me in other countries we wouldn't even be able to allowed to do this or say these things or talk this way, which is so spooky, especially when it's 2023 and you should be
Hmm.
able to say whatever you want to say and get on YouTube. It's like, who are we harming by being on YouTube? That's very interesting. So if you were to have to pick between a secular channel or like a science-based channel, would you have a preference? Well, one was like just science stuff, one is just secularity,
Um,
humanism.
I don't know if that's really actually possible, because there
That's a
are
great
so many
point.
areas
Yeah,
where
yeah,
religion just tries to over assert itself above and beyond science. I know Forrest tries to keep his atheism out of his channel for the most part. Occasionally he'll do a video specifically focusing on it, but it seems like every other video, it just comes up.
it just does, right. It really does because so many people disagree with science, even on the just the base level of where did stuff come from or where has stuff been in the past. That's wild. I didn't even think about that. I thought I'd ask you a gotcha question, and you're like reverse Uno. Very
Yeah.
cool. And so if you had to yeah, there you go. How do you do that? I need to know how to get that stuff to pop up on my screen. Is that part of that OBS thing?
Yeah.
Routine. And everybody's probably gonna make fun of me because I know OBS is more than just that OBS thing, but I'm not gonna pretend like I understand it. I've tried. I've done my best.
No, no, it's all good. I've been learning from the Grand Master Peter de Tucker. and I'm still way short of his level with the things you can do.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah.
I just learned some tech stuff from, doing a call-in show where they made me do a tech run, and I was like, "Ooh, these are great. Ooh, I can adjust my camera this way. Ooh, I can hook up to either. Oh, this is cool." So, yeah, I don't blame you one bit. Do you have siblings? Do you come from, like, a large family, small family-ish?
Well, it's hard to describe. I have an older half sister, a regular brother, and then a deceased younger stepsister.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. Are they religious at all? Do they follow any particular, denomination or anything like that?
My my older half sister may. We haven't spoken since my stepsister passed.
Got it.
But she hung out with the very religious side of the family up until that point. So maybe,
Maybe. Yeah, I'm the same way.
yeah.
If people ask me if my extended family is religious, I'm like, "I'm guessing." They haven't asked to be on my channel, so I don't know. So, what else are you about? What are you about when you're not on YouTube, when you're not, so you have an organization, right, where, they're in New York, and what does that entail? What do you do for that group?
Mostly we're still trying to fundraise so we can do more stuff.
Yeah,
We produce a Comic Con in Watertown every summer.
that's
We try
cool.
to do extra events when we can. Next year, we're hoping to branch out into theatrical production because, as weird as it is, there's actually in the community theaters in our area, LGBT people are tolerated because they have to
Mm,
be, but they're not
yeah,
really accepted.
that
And
sucks.
I feel like it's important to have an organization that's doing work where it's a active inclusion. Like you're not just allowed to be here, you're actually
Yeah.
welcome, you know?
Yeah, and that's such a good distinction, the difference between existing there because it's literally illegal to kick you out versus being welcome and sought after there. That's
Yeah.
that's a great distinction. And it seems like the LGBTQ plus community is really important to you, and I think that's really, really cool, especially when you combine your emphasis on, secularity and building community there, but also your, focus on, like, the LGBT community. I think it's fantastic. I think
Yeah, I
it's
think
great.
there's a lot of crossover between I realize that there's a huge proportion of the community who's very right-wing leaning, Pine Creek, but there's a lot of crossover between secular humanism and um, LGBT rights and things because we see there's no reason to not have everybody be equal. That's what humanism
Right.
tells us. And
Right.
the people who push back against that idea, that equality for everybody, they're always exclusively either doing it for religious reasons or because they're open fascists.
Yeah. Well, and to me, it just doesn't make sense why, like you said, why everybody doesn't, for whatever reason, belong on an equal plane. But what makes even less sense to me is why people who, many people, not all, but many people who follow a religion or at least certain denominations that claim the whole point is to love everyone and to, love thy neighbor. Honor thy father and thy mother, right? It's all about making sure that you treat people kindly. Why that is one of the first communities to then say, accept you. Or they say, love the sinner, hate the sin. So they're still not accepting you in your entirety, right? I remember growing up and
Mhm.
hearing that, hearing love the sinner, hate the sin. Oh, I get it. But as an adult, it seems like such a backhanded compliment. It's like saying, "Hi, I'm here to help you despite the fact that you're gay or despite the fact that you're trans. You're welcome. I'll get a badge for that." It doesn't seem genuine. And I think also there's probably a lot of people who the number one reason that they don't go to church anymore is because of how they were treated because they were in the LGBT community. So it's like it goes hand in hand, right? When you see people being mistreated or when you're mistreated by those who are supposed to guide you spiritually, why would you continue to be a part of that church or that denomination?
Yeah, yeah. It's mind what people do, not just what they say. There's,
Right.
so many groups are out there. Oh, God loves everyone, but we as representatives of God hate you specifically.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Or we love you, but we hate everything about you. But we love you, but we hate the things that you do and you wear and you say. And you're like, okay, so what's left to like then? I'm confused. And
yeah.
so, correct me if I'm wrong, you yourself are a member of the LGBTQ community?
Yep.
And
I'm a non-binary person. Um, obviously, I present very man-looking ish. This magnificent beard is hard to let go of, though.
mm,
But
mm. Honestly, I would have one if I could grow one, 100%, just for the
yeah, beards are great.
aspect.
Sometimes you let it get a little longer. You can store a pen in there or something. Oh, all kinds of
Some
fun stuff.
leftovers.
Yes, save
um,
them for later.
and so how long have you known that about yourself?
Well, honestly, the non-binary thing is a bit of a compromise. I knew I
Okay.
was a trans person from a very young age. Um, I probably would be considerably different if gender affirming options had been available to me at a younger age.
Mhm.
But now I've reached the point where I'm just like, it's expensive and a little bit risky, and it's not super important at
Yeah.
this stage, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just kind of maybe things will change in the future, but for the moment, the dysphoria is not horrible, so I just kind of exist with how I am. But honestly, I just ignored it for years. I mean, I hated it when I'd get like gender related stuff. Like my kid's mom was always with that whole toxic masculinity. You have to be a real man and not have feelings and all that crap. And I was like, you don't even really know me, do you?
No,
Um,
not at all.
yeah, that
That's
was rough. But it
but
was my
also who
oldest that
wants to
kind
be with a
of
person like that anyway?
right.
Like,
But my oldest was inspiring to me. One of the reasons that I'm much more active in activism now is because my oldest went to the same high school I did, coincidentally, because we do move around a bit, so it was just
yeah.
pure coincidence.
How funny.
Um, and there was the Christian nationalist movement has been getting more and more strength in the area. Like I said, it's mostly very red in this region.
That's wild.
And they were like, this isn't cool. Like the kids were openly bullying anybody who was queer or trans or anything, any part of the LGBT group, and they just openly bully them. And if anybody pushed back on them, it was that kid who got in trouble. And
Yeah. Why does that happen?
because the people in charge have a bias and they're not afraid to, um, I don't want to get too political here, but there's a certain side of the
Go
political
for it.
spectrum.
Go for it. Do it.
Little demon on my shoulder here. Yeah, as we've seen with recent events as high as the White House, there's one side of the political spectrum feels no problem with open corruption. If you believe what they want you to believe, you can get away with literally murder sometimes.
As long as you
And if you're
murder
on the
the
other side,
correct
you need to be
group.
jailed. Yes,
That's
yes.
wild. That's wild. And so you knew that about yourself growing up, but then you ignored it. How long did you ignore that for? Decades?
Yeah. Yeah, it was well, I didn't know, what a trans person was or what non-binary. I didn't have the terminology for
Yeah.
many, many years because in partially it's this region, partially it took the internet a while to catch up and start spreading accurate information instead of just 4chan memes.
Oh
So I just
gosh.
didn't know, you know?
4chan. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, once my oldest came out to me and said I'm a non-binary person. I
Wow.
they were AFAB, but didn't really feel it, and also didn't want to transition. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, they were like, don't hate me. I'm telling you first because you're the most open-minded person in my universe, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, I've got something to tell you too, you know. And then they went and they founded an LGBT club in the high school they got it working and they run and now they do all the things. They come back from college to participate in the Pride Parade over in Syracuse, which is the nearest
That's amazing.
major city. Yeah, they're big inspiration to me. I'm like, my kid is doing some cool shit. I gotta at least be open about who I am so that people
Yeah.
because there's so many of us who can't, you know? There's so
Yes,
many people who will
yes,
get in trouble or even be in danger if they can't.
yes.
So I feel like anybody who can stand up and say, I'm part of this community, I'm with these people, at least just like with the secular community, those people who are isolated can know that they're not alone.
Yes, and that's so important. I feel like a lot of older generations, they don't understand why we're always going off about representation matters, exposure matters, bringing things
Hmm.
to the surface. They're always saying, like stop putting your beliefs in my face, which is ironic, first of all. Without getting too political, it's a little ironic. But also it the fact that somebody can look at a an entire population's ability to live, ability to exist the same way that they get to enjoy existing, and their response to that is, "Ew, get it out of my face. Ew." You're standing here saying, "I'm a human being. I deserve the same rights as everybody else. I deserve the same freedoms as everybody else, and all I want is to be recognized as a part of society." And people say, "Ew, get that out of my face." I can't imagine treating an entire group of people like that. And yet we see it happen every single day. And it's 2023. It's just wild. It's just
Yeah,
wild.
it is. It's the same people who want to make everyone say Merry Christmas because Happy Holidays isn't good enough, despite the fact that Jewish people have holidays, Muslim people have holidays, there's Kwanzaa, there's all these
Yeah.
other holidays
Yep.
in that. No, it has to be Merry Christmas or they get triggered. They need to talk to the manager, and explosive posts all over Twitter and Facebook. They get all in your face. But if
They
you dare to just exist, how dare you?
How dare you? I said on TikTok the other day, I was like, "Isn't it weird that when you're told not to talk about religion or politics at the holidays, what it actually means is only the forethinking left-wing people aren't allowed to say anything political or religious at the holidays.
Hmm.
Everybody else can say whatever they want, but you are not. When they say don't, they just mean you, and then if you say, actually, can I cut in and provide some facts?" They go, "Wow, you're defensive. You're defensive." Maybe this is very suspiciously specific. Maybe I'm projecting, but that's the experience that I've had is don't talk politics at the holidays just means Sydney don't talk politics at the holidays. And my brother, because he's also one of the libs just like me. Um, now
Yeah,
were
I got that
you
talk too. And then we'd still have to, sit there while everybody else said grace and all that. I'm like, okay, no religion though. Sure,
Oh,
gotcha.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And so were you ever married at any point in like a cis relationship, or did you, because you have children, right? You have multiple children?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I was married to the kid's mom for 10 years ish, depending on how you count. Because we did one of those things that people of our generation sometimes do, and just the law is stupid. Marriage should be a ceremony between people and their close friends and whatnot. So we did the ceremony, and then a few years later we made it legal. So
Got it.
depending on how you count, around 10 years.
Got it. And when you came out as non-binary, were you still married at the time, or were you already divorced at that point or separated?
Yeah, separated for quite some time.
Interesting. And how did your child react when you came out at the same time they came out? Were they surprised, or did they know about that like forever and you didn't know they knew?
So my oldest was relieved, of course, because they were worried about their own being accepted, and the fact that I'm on the same team, it just made it so much easier for them.
I bet. I bet.
My son, my middle child, didn't care. He was like, whatever. And my youngest has the attitude of like, oh my goodness. You actually remind me a lot of her because she's just very, very
I'm so
funny.
sorry. I'm so sorry. I know what I'm like and I apologize.
But yeah, when she found out, she went, I always thought you were kind of fruity.
Oh, you're like, "How dare you? How dare you?"
Yeah.
That that's wonderful. I gotta tell you, that gives me so much joy. Especially the fact that your middle child was like, "Eh." I am so excited. I am so excited for a future where everybody's response is meh to finding out
Hmm.
those things, where it's so normalized, it's so allowed, it's so celebrated even that whenever people come out to their children or come out to teens that they know, the teens like, okay, can I still like play my video games now, or is that, is that like, do I have to stop? I
Mhm.
because I think that's wonderful. I think that's just absolutely wonderful. But do you feel like your life has changed in any way since you came out? Has it made a huge impact? Stayed about the same?
Not really significantly. It opened up a new avenue of people who were willing to hit on me, but
Oh, oh.
yeah, because I mean, they're when you look a certain way, people make assumptions and they
Yes.
assume that you're only open to certain things. And when you go, no, no, that's not the case, then they go, oh, really?
And they go,
What are you doing on
oh,
Friday?
pray tell. They slide into those DMs. They're like, hello. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. And do you feel like you get a better? Do you feel like you get an easier reception coming out to people as non-religious or coming out to people as non-binary? Which do you think gets the most visceral response?
It really depends on the audience.
Yeah.
Um, I find that a lot of um, shoot, man, I can't think of a single consistent audience that's one way or another way. Every group is weighted when it's around theater people. They're open about both things. No one cares.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But when it's around theater administrators, it varies. Some of them are really, really heavy on the Christianity, but don't really care who you are. Some of them don't really care about the religion, but are very particular. Oh, you're not a real trans person. You look like a man to me. You don't know who you are. I'm going to tell you who you are. That kind of thing.
Whoa. Whoa. First of all, I am shocked that there are Christians who are in theater administration. I never thought about it, but that would not have been a place that I put them. Interesting.
It's surprisingly now. In fairness, there's one organization in particular that's nearby me that like goes a little over the top with the religious stuff, but the person who founded that organization didn't do it for religious reasons. That was just a component of her character. She believed
Oh.
very strongly in the importance of theater
Oh.
for all the good reasons, like
Yeah.
spreading the old works that nobody really does anymore, the things you can learn from the technical side to appearing on stage to memorizing lines. There's so many skills that go into theater that are very, very useful later, plus the art of the whole thing. And there wasn't a really strong theater presence in that particular community when she came. So it was a valuable thing. It's just she kind of let her own beliefs infect the organization and then everybody ran with it.
Oh, that's so interesting. And it's tough to say anything against that because I recognize that I get on camera and then I'm like, "Hey, atheist." Like, you know what I mean? So it's hard to say, "Oh, you shouldn't let your beliefs get involved in your creative projects." Unless you're me, unless you're atheist, and then you can let them be involved in every project. Are you an actor? Were you ever an actor?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I've loved theater forever. I was in a
Yeah.
my first play was when I was in second grade. I got to be the Cowardly Lion.
No
But
way. That's awesome.
yeah, it was pretty neat. But I was constantly involved in everything. During middle school and high school, I was one of those people who did literally everything. I was on the track team. I got involved with soccer. I did Science Olympiad. I did Future Business Leaders of America. And I did both the drama club and the local community theater,
Wow.
scouts, everything I could possibly do. But if there was a show on, I wanted to be in it because I freaking loved theater.
Yes. What's your favorite part you've ever played?
Weirdly, it was a part that wasn't supposed to be a part. It was a show called Murder in the Magnolias, where
Ooh,
you're familiar?
I am.
Yeah. So in that show, there's a murder plant that's supposed to be a prop, but I had an idea,
Oh no.
so I played the murder plant. And every time the voodoo drums hit, I would do some random dance. I'd do the Macarena or something, and completely stole the show. I
I was
owned
gonna
it
say
as
I've
a as
never
a as a
seen.
prop.
Yeah, I've never seen a translation of that play where somebody plays the plant. So you win. You win. That's yeah, my I guess I've never talked about this on this channel. My brother's actually a playwright. And he's directed theater
Hmm.
for many, many years. He was an actor probably a decade and a half ago, but now he's primarily directing theater and writing plays and things like that. Yeah, theater's been a huge influence in my life, my entire life. I can tell you, I am a terrible actress. I am a bad actress. I used to just think that, but I have proof now. I have proof. Um, the last time I auditioned for a play, or I'm sorry, for an acting role, this would have been for a short film. I was supposed to play a waitress, and there was literally 2 lines. Like, a friend of a friend got me this role. They probably just did it to be nice to my brother. And I say the line, you know, or 2, and the director goes, "Okay, try that again, but try it like, like, give it to me like you mean it." And so I did it again, and he goes, "Okay, try it like, you know, you're shocked," or something like that. And so I did like a shocked version. And as I left the room, my friend pats me on the shoulder and goes, "Hey, it's okay." And that was when I knew that I wasn't gonna get that part, because I thought it went fine. I was like, "Okay, I'm just doing what I'm asked." But he goes, "Hey, you know what? It's okay." And then later that day, I applied to be a waitress and also didn't get that, so it was fine. But yeah, bad actress, hopefully better comedian. Is there a dream role that you have that you would want to play?
Not particularly. There's shows that I'd like to see done, but I don't necessarily want to be in them.
Yeah.
Like our first objective for the nonprofit is we're aiming at doing Arsenic and Old Lace, because it's one of my partner people, co-board members, whatever. Also my upstairs neighbor. He's always wanted to do Arsenic himself. He thinks
What a
the
good
Teddy
show.
Roosevelt comedy is just fantastic.
Yes.
So yeah, we're aiming at producing that first. I personally would like to see some of the Greek classics, like Antigone, for example. It just never gets produced. We have Shakespeare in
Never.
the Park, but there's nothing from the Greeks.
Yeah. Have you seen this might be controversial. Have you seen Eurydice by Sarah Rule? Have you
I
seen
can't
that
say
show?
that I have. It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, never mind. Because I feel like you would really, really like it. But I have thoughts on that play. But since you've never seen it, I won't deep dive into that. You should. I would be interested to see what you think, because it's a Greek play written very modern. I think she wrote it in maybe 2008, 2007. I saw it the first time in 2008, but I'd be interested to see what you think. I can send you some links to that afterward. Anybody in the
Sure.
chat, if you've seen the play Eurydice by Sarah Rule, let me know what you thought about it. Oh, somebody says, Spooky Bed Hair says, "My favorite film is Arsenic and Old Lace." Also, I know a lot of people have been asking about the birds in the chat. They're not joining me today because about 10 seconds before I hopped on here, I was running home from the vet and I put the poor injured bird in the aviary to get comforted, and I didn't have time to bring all my birds out here like I usually have. I usually have my parrots with me. So they're not here. They're in there, but they are comforting their friend who is got some loopy feel good drugs now, so he's doing good. So, what are your goals for the future if you could pick like a creative direction to go in? Would it be to continue just building your organization? Would you do that along with other things? Would you want to go back into acting? What would kind of be your thing if you could make it happen for yourself?
It's kind of a multi-threaded thing.
Yeah.
I think probably if I had my druthers, I'd do all the things. But the thing I'd really like to do is movies.
Yes.
I already filmed one, and I'm trying to find the time to finish the post production. I think it'll be really cool. It's nearby. There's an abandoned Girl Scout camp. They abandoned it like
Ooh.
20, 25 years ago, and I was like, we need to have a ghost story movie at the abandoned camp. So we
Yeah.
did, and I wrote the script during
That is so
COVID. We
spooky.
filmed it immediately after COVID. Unfortunately, super low budget and time constraints on the cast. I had to film it in a week, so it's not the
Wow.
best film ever. But if I can finish it, I feel like it'll be cool. And I've got 5 more scripts I've written. I could shoot today if I had the time and the financing. And it's frustrating, but I'd like to do that.
That's amazing. One of these days, I really want to do like a live stream fundraiser with you and raise money for your projects, because that's fantastic. That sounds awesome. Film, literature, theater, I think all of that is so important. And I honestly think exposure to culture like that, to live theater, to acting, to theory, to the Greeks, to literature, I think that can truly help people not fall down these, I don't want to say conservative, but I'm going to say conservative rabbit holes. And I know there's a spectrum of conservative people. I know not all of them are the same, but we know the ones I'm talking about. We know specifically the ones I'm talking about. I feel like exposure to different thoughts and ideas from a young age is so important because nowadays
Hmm.
if somebody's like 30 and you try to get them to read a Greek tragedy and they've never read one before, they're going to be like, miss me with that bullshit. And like I wouldn't blame them because it doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't know what you're looking at. But like British literature, just things like Canterbury Tales, stuff like that. I feel like if we can really promote those things at an early age, middle school, junior high, high school, that could potentially be one of the catalysts that really changes our country as a society, right? It's just
Hmm.
educational. It just opens people's minds. It gets them thinking. And it's so sad when I hear people that grow up, they're in their 30s and 40s and they've never even heard of these things. It's one thing to be exposed to it and it's just not your thing. I get it. There's people who are going to prefer basketball or other things, other interests, but to meet people they've never gotten to see things like Some Like It Hot, black and white movies, Monty Python, theater, murder mystery theater, just things like that
Hmm.
that are just so fun to be a part of. It bums me out. So I'm all for it. I'm all for promoting whatever you got going on. If you ever decide to do a theater premiere for your movie, let me know. I'll bring a crew.
Cool. Could be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Do you have any interests that are kind of like out of left field where you're like, people wouldn't expect this of me, but
I don't know. I'm just used to generally being an out of left field sort of person. Like I
when you
feel like
live out of left
everything I do
field,
is weird. Yeah.
when you plant roots and build a house out of left field, it's hard to get further left field than that. That's
Yeah.
interesting. What do you find is the majority of your audience? Is it mostly LGBTQ individuals? Is it specifically atheists? Is it a mix of everyone? Do you ever have Christians show up in the chat? Who do you think you target the most with your content?
I think I probably reach secular folk in general who include an array of LGBT people and allies. I find a number of people who are curious about LGBT stuff uh, sometimes come to me because I seem like an open person who's okay to talk to and get answers to questions. One of my biggest supporters, my first patron, one of the first members on the channel, um, he started out with like, I love what you do atheism wise. I don't understand a damn thing about LGBT. And we've gradually worked through it and talked about things and yeah, he still has questions, but that's understandable. You go your whole life not knowing what this thing is, and it's this whole group of people. Of course, there's going to be questions for quite some
Yeah.
time. But he's happy to be involved and learn and be the best ally he can, and he's a great person.
Yeah.
I do occasionally get Christians, not that often. Some who just want to like know about a specific thing. I only have like one resident theist in my channel who goes through my videos and like leaves the controversial, contrary comments. Like
That's funny.
I'll do something about evolution, and he'll be like, "Well, the Bible proves evolution didn't happen," and that kind of thing.
And like no links to support evidence. You're like, at
Yeah.
least leave a link for me, man. At least leave a link. I used to have a very dedicated hater, and I actually, now that you bring it up, I haven't heard from them in a while. I hope they're okay. They used to leave some of the meanest comments, and I kind of miss them a little bit, to be honest. If anybody wants to leave anything really mean in the chat to make me feel at home, you are more than welcome to. That would be wonderful. So if you, what do you think would be better in your personal opinion? If religious institutions became more accepting of the LGBTQ community, or if people as a whole became more secular as they accepted the LGBTQ community. Like, do you think it would be that religion is still harmful enough that you don't necessarily want people to stay in the church because they're accepted? Would you rather them kind of explore secularity, or would it be better to have churches that want people genuinely who are members of the LGBTQ community to stay?
Well, I hate to broad brush it, but
Yeah.
to keep it relatively simple, I think we're better off without organized religion. I cannot think of a single way that directed belief telling other people how to live their lives is ever not harmful,
Right.
even to the believer.
Right. Absolutely. I completely agree. Very interesting. Oh, the insults are rolling in. I'm gonna be honest. I totally forgot I just said that, and I was like, "What are all these mean comments doing?" I like my I totally forgot. I saw Aunt Jared call my bird smelling. I was like, "What the hell?" And then I remembered I literally just said. Sorry.
You asked
That's
for this.
I know it's been a long day, guys. You would not believe the day I have had. We've only been talking for like the last few minutes of it, but wow, it has been a day. Very interesting. And so, w- if you had people in your life that found your YouTube channel, do you think, and they didn't know it existed, do you think they would be surprised? Do you think it would be pretty on brand? Would there be discussion, discourse, arguments over it?
I think it depends on how they know me. Like,
Got it.
a couple of my friends already do know. I had one of, actually, the last person I had a relationship with came on one of my shows where we were talking
Interesting.
about LGBT issues. Because, they're very big into LGBT advocacy also. And I thought they might have a fun time. They seem to, but people get busy, and Jess is a very, very busy person. I understand. Um, my kids are aware, but they don't really. They outgrew YouTube. They watched Markiplier, 10 years ago, and now YouTube is old people stuff.
It is. Facebook and YouTube, my 2 favorite things, and the kids are all segueing away from it. Hopefully, we can keep up. I don't know. I'm real tired.
Yeah, hard to say.
Did becoming a parent change at all how you feel about, um, like, your identity, your sexuality, your religious identity? Did it impact in any way how quickly you kind of decided to, I don't wanna say label yourself, but how quickly you decided to follow a certain direction? Did it slow you down at all? Is everything pretty much the same it would have been without your children?
Hmm. Um. Well, I'm not. It's hard to compare because my goal was to have children.
Mhm,
My grandmother had a very large family.
mhm.
I had lots of aunts and uncles, and I thought that was a great thing, and I wanted to have a large family too. And also, I did the math. It was bad math. Don't follow my example, but I did the math. I figured if you have your children as young as possible, you're
Oh.
still relatively young when grandchildren start showing up. So you still have the energy to chase them around, and you have the best chance of seeing great grandchildren.
Wow.
So that part made sense.
Yeah,
But in hindsight, it's definitely wiser to get your financial situation put together before trying to have kids, regardless of what time. Yeah,
that's
because
really funny.
it was a rough few years. I
Yeah,
was
how
working
old were
3
you?
full-time jobs. I was 20 when well, yeah, 20. It was just days before I turned 21 when my oldest was born.
Wow, and so you were working, like, 3 jobs and doing a bunch of stuff to kind
Hmm.
of keep a roof over your head? Wow, that's wild. How old are you now, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's see. I just turned 43
Oh, I thought we were a lot closer to the
chronologically.
same age. Yeah, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
guessed.
Oh, the
Yeah.
camera lies for me. It's wonderful.
Yeah, same, same, so all these filters. Uh, that's very interesting, though, and so was there, I mean, do you still feel like that was a good plan for you? Or do you ever look back and be like, "Eh, I coulda waited another 10 years?" Granted, I know
Um,
you love your children. I'm not saying do you
Yeah,
regret
it's hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't trade the kids for anything. They're
Of
all
course.
wonderful kids in a
Yeah,
huge variety of different ways.
yeah.
They're creative as hell. They're accepting. They're so compassionate. Absolutely wonderful humans. But as far as everything else involved in the
Like, if you could
situation,
have the same kids, just at a different time.
right, yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like it was poorly thought out. I definitely had biased thinking in the decision making process.
Yeah, that's funny. Do you find that your child has an easier time or a different time, maybe not easier, just different, um, existing as a member of the LGBT community? Or is it, are you seeing them go through a lot of the same things that you feel like you went through?
It's hard to say because, like I said, I mostly just ignored that part of myself when I was growing up because there wasn't language for it, there wasn't a community for it. It was just tough shit, do your best with what you've got. whereas my oldest just confronts it head on, with the pride pins, and they've got a special pair of sneakers with rainbow soles and things. They're very loud about it. Like,
Yeah,
this is who I am, and I
that's
think that's
awesome.
fantastic.
Yeah,
But it also does create a bit more confrontational situations because they're very much announcing it.
that makes
And
sense.
we also live in an era where, as much as it sucked not having a community back in the day, there was no one actively out to get you either, you know?
That's true. Yeah, yeah, interesting. Man, there's so much to think about because I feel incredibly privileged that I was never part of any kind of group that was targeted for anything, you know? Even when I was a drama nerd, right? And in the movies they say we get picked on, everybody was really nice to me. Like, I'm about to do stand up at my class reunion in a couple weeks, and like, I don't nobody bullied me. People are like, "Oh, are you going to shit all over the people?" They didn't. They were nice to me. Now, they were too nice and they let me be fucking weird for way too long, but that's beside the point. Like, they should have actually bullied me, honestly. That's my bone to pick with them. But it's just so interesting to look back on, my high school experience, my youth experience, and think that, like, parallel at the exact same time, probably sitting next to me, people were going through such grown up things, right? Like, the oh, I can't think of a word for the moment. Like, holding against a kid that is gay or bi or trans is just such a weird idea to me. Like, adults holding things against kids for how they feel and who they want to be. I just can't even fathom growing up in a world where that's acceptable. And yet it is. Like, it happens all the time. It's just bizarre to me, especially as an adult now. I can't even fathom having an opinion about what a kid is doing with their lives or how they feel or how they want to identify. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's really
I
sad.
think part of it is there's always been some aspect of judgmentalism, tribalism, and all of those things. Like, when I was in high school, Democrats were evil, but no one really cared. There was a lot of the nerds versus jocks thing still going on. I guess that still happens, but it's kind of back burner compared to politics. Um, which was a weird position because when I was doing Science Olympiad, nerd, you smell bad. But when I was on the track team, then big blockheaded dummy kind of, I'm like, will you people make up your mind who I am?
Yeah, yeah. You're like, I can't be both at the same time. I'll take either one. I just can't be both. Um, do you have a favorite science fact? Do you have a favorite thing you've ever looked up where you're like, that sticks with me and I love it?
Hmm. There's a lot of cool science facts. The first thing that pops into my head, so I guess this would be what you're asking for, is 3C273. It's the nearest quasar to Earth, and it was the first quasar discovered. We knew it was a radio source for a long time. We had a lot of radio sources. Most of them turned out to be galaxies or burned out supernovas and so forth. But this was a quasar. We didn't know what the hell it was. We still don't know for sure what the hell they are. But most of them are way out in the distant universe, which is one of the ways we know the universe has evolved over time because quasars used to be a thing, and then around the present day, they're not anymore. But 3C273 is just really, really close and really, really bright. It's the only quasar you can see with the naked eye.
Interesting.
It's so cool.
And so, quasar, that's not a star? Is it a star? Is it
We
similar
our
to a star?
Our best guess at the moment is that they're active galactic nuclei, that the supermassive black hole at the center of a galaxy is feeding on a lot of stuff. And, when a black hole gets spun up, it gets that accretion disk, and some of the matter, because of the electromagnetic forces in the disk, some of the matter gets shunted into a relativistic jet that's shot out of the black hole instead of falling in. And if that jet happens to be pointed towards us, then it looks stupidly bright. And we think that's probably maybe what quasars are, but we're not sure.
Interesting. I'm gonna write that down. Just the quasar part, not everything that you said. I'll have to go back
Yeah.
and look one. That's fascinating. Any others up your sleeve that you're just like, well, this is my party trick science fact that I love?
I wish I had party trick science facts. I think it would depend on the party.
I was gonna say.
There's a new comet that we just discovered a month ago or so that, as of today, is naked eye visible. and it'll get brighter and brighter until about the middle of the month. I can't pronounce the name of it. It was discovered by someone in India, and so it gets their name, and I can't pronounce it. But if you're up early in the morning, 4 a.m. ish, you'll see Venus creeping up over the horizon. If you look to the left and a little bit up from Venus, you might be able to see it. It'll look like a fuzzy star with a green tail, and it'll get brighter and brighter, but it'll get closer and closer to the sun as we get towards the middle of the month. Oh,
Interesting.
there's a
And
new
then
comet. Hooray.
it just like passes us by, or where is it like traveling?
Yeah, it's on
It's
its
in
way
motion?
in towards the sun.
Got it.
So it'll pass nearest us around the middle of the month, and then we'll lose it on the daytime side of the sky as it moves closer and closer towards the sun.
Interesting. And will it just keep going until it hits the sun, or be stopped by like the gravitational forces outside the sun? Are there even?
Um, I don't know if we have a full orbit on it. A lot of comets do crash into the sun, but the ones that we see over and over, like Halley's Comet, they go around the sun and then they come back out. Some of them get really close. Some of them not so close at all. I don't think Halley's Comet gets much closer than Earth's orbit. I'd have to look it up to be sure. Maybe it crosses the orbit of Venus, but it's lasted so long because it keeps its distance.
That's cool. Hey, you know what? I relate. I relate. I've lasted this long because I've kept my distance. That's probably why I've aged so well too. I just stay far away from people. Do you have any non-religion, non-political, unpopular opinions? Hills you're willing to die on?
Pineapple does not belong on pizza.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't say attack me, please. I actually love. I'm gonna say it: pineapple and mushroom on pizza.
Oh,
Till I'm
mushroom for
dead.
sure. Mushroom is the best.
Mushroom is the best with
Mhm.
pineapple. Wow. Okay, right out of the gate, we're getting controversial. Any others?
Shoot. I don't know. I mean, things come up in conversation, and I'm like, hold on now.
Yeah.
But
Whoa. Wait a second.
yeah, but trying to think of it in the moment, no, it doesn't really occur. It's true. I am
That's
I am a
blaspheme.
sinner. I am irredeemable.
Sacrilege.
It just the great holiness just face palms at me.
That's hilarious. That's funny. I'm trying to think of other unpopular opinions that people are. Have you seen Barbie or Oppenheimer? Either one of those.
Barbie, yes.
You saw Barbie? Was it good? Would you say?
It was all right. There was a lot of overemphasis on gender for my taste, but I get it, you know.
But I get it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it yet. Still haven't seen Oppenheimer. Do you have a famous movie that everybody loves that you say no, it's garbage?
I think it's called A Christmas Story. It's the one with the little kid who wants the Red Ryder rifle, and everybody says you'll shoot your eye out, and the dad wants a lamp that's made out of a leg or something. Everybody says it's the greatest freaking movie. I'm like, it just I don't get it. Like, everyone is stupid. They all do stupid things. Most of them are horrible people. I don't know why people like this movie.
Well, apparently not everybody does. Jackson Rose says, "Oh, I hate that movie too, Ember."
Mm.
That's funny. Well, you know, I can't even say I've seen the whole thing because I too see that movie's on television, and I leave the room. I feel that way about that animated Abominable Snowman movie that always shows up around the holidays. It's like that old the 60s like stop motion Abominable Snowman movie. It gives me the creeps. I don't like it. I know it's a classic, but I don't like
I
it.
know I've seen it, but I can't really remember that. But it's the same sort of thing. Like there's
Yeah.
a few movies that get shown over and over and over. That Christmas Story one, it sticks in my head because before there was Polar Express, that was the movie that got shown in school every fucking year. And I'm
Now
like,
it's
can I
that
opt out? Can I go wait in the hallway?
Yeah,
You
now
know,
it's that new Grinch, the newest one, the animated one, from like 5 years ago. Oh, who sings the main theme? Some very popular artist sings the main theme. They showed it at school. I worked at schools very briefly during the pandemic, and I just couldn't believe how mild they had made the Grinch. I felt like they just disparaged his name and his image. He wasn't mean enough. He's the Grinch. Like, you got to be rude, but they're trying to be like too polite now.
Yeah, that's not cool. The whole point is
No.
the redemption arc. You got to make him mean to make it
Right.
count.
Right. His heart can't grow 5 sizes larger or whatever and not kill him if it doesn't start out small.
Hmm.
You want him to go to freaking have a heart attack. Um I'm going to say this and I'm probably going to lose all my subs. I'm going to say it. Another movie that everybody thinks is great that I think is absolute garbage is Pulp Fiction. I'm going
I
to
still haven't seen it, so I can't weigh in on that one.
It's just I just can't. I just can't. The cast just ruined it for me. You can't have Bruce Willis in the same movie as two other actors who also play themselves. I'm just going to be honest. Like everybody can't play themselves in the same movie. Your movie can support one famous actor who's famous for playing themselves. The rest have got to do at least a little bit of acting in my opinion. I say that knowing that I also said I'm a terrible actress. But
How dare you?
yeah. So what do you think is in store for you in the future? If you had to guess, I know that it's impossible to predict given the last 5 years, but if you had to guess, what do you think? Do you think you'll stay in the same area where you live?
Probably not. The kids all want to move away. Things are job wise are pretty shitty here.
Yeah.
Not to overly complain about things, but I've wanted to move forever. The kids don't want to because they want to stay near grandma. But now as they're getting up into their own lives, my oldest is a senior, a post grad in college now.
Wow,
This is their last year.
that's awesome.
My youngest is a senior in high school. They're all like, we don't need to be here anymore. We can go somewhere that's nicer, where maybe the sky doesn't try to kill us for 6 months out of the year. That would be cool,
But that would be too easy. It should
right?
be an uphill battle every day.
Yep,
That's funny. Yeah, I lived in Chicago. Do not miss those winters whatsoever. I'm in Nashville now. I just can't do another one of them. When it's -40 outside, I feel like I'm allowed to say that's too much. It's too much.
it's true. When the freedom units cross over with the science units, no, very
No,
bad.
no, no.
And can't have that. No, actually, Tennessee came up just recently. The kids, because they were talking about where should we go. I was like, well, it depends. I mean, the South is getting a little more hostile towards people of our variety
It
recently.
is.
But all things considered, I've always liked Tennessee because it's a lot like my area of New York during the summer, except without the tremendous humidity because you're
Yes.
not on a Great Lake. The
Yes.
winters are like our mid-spring,
Yes.
and you've got the mountains on one side and the Mississippi on the other, and most of the people are very, very nice. I
Yes.
really like the state.
Yeah, and I will say the first winter I ever lived here, when it was over, I thought, "That's it?" That's like I was waiting the whole time for the worst to come the entire time, and it never came. That was it. It was just mild, beautiful. I will say, beautiful scenery. If you like to hike, tons of places to hike. You can go fishing, you can go camping. But I will say, outside of Nashville, the politics are tough to ever see past. 10 years ago, it wouldn't have been a big deal, I don't think. I don't feel like people were nearly as vocal about that sort of thing, at least not in public, right? It was still considered rude to talk to
Mhm.
people about politics, but yeah, it's definitely, even though Nashville is a very blue city, it is very clear that if you are not from Nashville or if you appear to be a blue person, you are not welcomed here. Or if you have blue thoughts and beliefs, yeah, it's pretty tough. But I will say I've lived several places in the South, and Nashville's pretty fun. It's a pretty great place to be. Not gonna lie, and
So
it's warm.
to Uno reverse you with the interview a bit, why did you pick Nashville after being in Chicago?
Yeah, so I moved to Chicago when I was in 11th grade. I started doing stand up when I was 16. And I was working with the Second City. And when the pandemic hit and everything closed down, Second City went virtual. And at that point, I had already been in the city for 15 years. And so I realized that I didn't need to be paying Chicago prices for online work. And so I thought, oh, now's my chance because I had always wanted to leave and explore other places, but I loved Second City and I didn't want to leave it behind. It was kind of my ride or die. So I then I realized, oh, I can literally live anywhere. And maybe if I stay in the same time zone, it won't be as difficult to continue my virtual stuff. And so I thought, what is a big city, but will also be warm the majority of the time, but we'll also have like artsy fartsy liberal people. And so I had a friend at the time who lived in Nashville. I don't think they do anymore. And so I came down to visit and I thought, hell yeah, this is better than being stuck in my 900 square foot apartment because of lockdown. So yeah, then I came here. And so I've been here for just over 2 years. I've been here about 2 years and 3 months. And it's pretty much all the same things you like about a big city like Chicago, just minus the -40-degree temperatures. So
That is a big plus. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nashville. The Parthenon. Every time I'm nearby, I swing by and visit it. I'm like, oh, it's so cool.
yeah.
There's so much random stuff. There's oh shoot, I think it's called the Athenian Cafe or something. That's just a little bit south of the main city proper, and it's like it's a Greek restaurant on the outside, and when you go inside, it's like you're in Greece. There's like columns and shit, and I'm like, what?
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nashville is the headquarters for random stuff. Like, we just went to a bar the other day that's like a secret speakeasy. You have to kind of figure out where it's at. And then when you go in there, there's like magicians doing magic tricks, and you eat dinner and you get drinks. And then there's another magic show. There's like it was awesome. But it's like their whole thing is that they don't advertise where they are. So you have to find them and you have to go through a museum that's already
Mm.
closed unless you know where you're going. Yeah, there's random stuff. And what I like about it too is everybody thinks country music when they think Nashville, but unless you're directly downtown, you really don't hear it or see it much. It's not as overkill as I would have thought before I got here. There's a lot of people here. Somebody brought up in the chat. They said nobody who lives in Nashville is from Nashville, and that's a great point. That it really is. It's like all California, Chicago people, some New York people, and then all the actual Nashville people moved to Brentwood and Franklin. Um, and then Punk Apostate says, I'd say here in Florida is the best guy, is the best, but we got a Nazi problem lately. Yeah. You know, isn't that weird how
I've
like,
heard that rumor, and yeah, good to see you, Brentley. I've been trying to get a hold of Brentley for a while. We have to have a chat, my friend. You have an amazing
Brentley,
hat for starters.
yes, I can attest. Brentley is a wonderful person. We just had a episode of my podcast, and then I've known him
Mhm.
for before then, and he's just great. He's wonderful. So Punk Apostate, make it happen. This is me putting you two together. I'm pretending like I had anything to do with that. um, but yeah, I highly recommend Nashville for sure. I don't think I want to be in Tennessee my whole life because I've been in the South the majority of my life, but I'm not sad that I made a pit stop here on the way.
Sure.
Um, but I'm at that age where like big cities aren't necessarily always doing it for me anymore. You know, if you had asked me before the
Mm.
pandemic, I would have been like, big city, ride or die, grind until I'm dead. And now I'm just like, I'm really tired. like, and to be real, I just want more birds, and you can't have that many birds if you have neighbors. You know what I mean? You can't have more
Yeah,
than 10.
that's fair. So,
Yeah.
what are you thinking? Oregon, possibly Washington. We could
The
go visit Skeptics
Northeast,
and Scoundrels.
yeah, Northeast or Northwest. Portland was actually one of the places I was thinking about after I left, after I was planning on leaving Chicago. But I wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like. You know, they were having a lot of riots at the time and things like that, and so it was kind of a difficult place to consider moving at the time. I would love to live near Salem, Massachusetts, if
Mm.
it weren't $7,000 for a studio apartment in the vicinity
Hmm.
of that area.
It's
Yeah,
yeah,
there's not.
it's all Boston. It's like the
Yeah,
whole coastline is just extended Boston.
it's just Boston. It's just Boston, and then a bunch of like witch themed bars. That's the difference. That's how you know you've reached Salem. Um,
Yeah.
I would love to live somewhere I've never lived before. We moved a lot as a kid, so yeah, Northeast or Northwest would be really cool. Or if I stayed Southern, um, I've always thought Arizona or New Mexico would be pretty neat, but I don't know. I've never
Mm.
been, so I don't know if I would actually like living there. Georgia is beautiful. Parts of Mississippi are beautiful. There are definitely parts I would never go to ever. But like if I were to live in a place like Mississippi or Louisiana, I would want to live in like a big university town and work for the university type situation. I wouldn't want to live rural, I don't think, in some of those places. Maybe.
Yeah. It's really hit or miss because like you've got the conveniences, but in the rural you've got the more space,
Yeah.
and then there's the weather is the big factor. Like Northern California is very, very much like the rest of the Pacific Northwest,
Hmm.
but it's south of the constant rain clouds. But on the other hand, you can get trapped up there because you've got the coast highways that they're not prepared to snowplow for, and then you've got like Donner Pass, and so you can easily get snowed in Northern California. Um, yeah, there's a whole bunch of variation. Idaho has some beautiful parts to it,
It
like
does.
plains and then Snake River Canyon. It's just
Yeah.
there's so much cool. Colorado, even though they're in the mountains, they're on the lee side of the mountains, so they don't get nearly as much snow as say Chicago does. But because they're on the lee side of the mountains, they have the aspens and they get like 287 sunny days a year, and you've got
Wow.
on the one side the plains just go on forever because you're high altitude, so you can see further, and
That's
on the
so
other
cool.
side, Rocky Mountains.
Yes, yes. I almost passed out off the back of a horse riding in the Rocky Mountains when I was like 10. Minnesota is also surprisingly cool because we've been doing so much research on places to go. If you value like an outdoor lifestyle, Minnesota seems pretty cool, but it's those winters, man. I just I can't with these negative
Hmm
200
hmm
degrees. I just can't do it. It's just too much. Um,
Yeah, Neil, the 604 atheist, is not the first Canadian who's tried to get me to consider British Columbia. I had a friend back in my World of Warcraft days who lived in that area too, and he was constantly trying to get me to move over so we could like play together and whatnot. And but yeah, the Canadian winters, I don't know. I mean, it's granted I live right in a snow band. If
yeah.
it's snowing right here. But it's just no, I don't wanna.
Yeah, there was a while where I thought I was gonna transfer to Toronto, a second city, but I found out that pit bulls are outlawed in Toronto. You can't have a pit. Um,
What?
yeah, I know. So maybe when she's kicked the bucket, did you hear that? No, I'm just kidding. When she's kicked the bucket, maybe, but probably not. I don't imagine Toronto would like how many parrots that I have. Maybe I should just get a cabin out in the middle of nowhere and make my house an aviary and live in the aviary with the birds. That seems ideal to me. I don't know. Are you a pet
Yeah.
person? Do you have pets?
I don't at the moment, partly because my life is so much in flux, and partly because
Oh, yeah,
until
you've got a lot going on.
recently I was a truck driver, so I wasn't
Oh,
around enough to take care of a pet. But my upstairs people, they have a they have a lot of critters. There's three cats and a Great Dane, and
wow.
then a small dog who's part lab, part pit bull, part something else. She's the cutest little fuck, but
I
she eats
bet.
everything. If it's in reach, she chews it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Interesting.
Hmm
So what kind of truck driver were you? Like refrigerated freight, dry freight, metal freight?
I started with a refrigerated company. Didn't really like that
Yeah.
because you always get the groceries. You have to go to California and pick up the
Yes.
groceries, and
Yes.
then you've got to stop every 500
Yes.
miles or less and thermometer them to make sure that they're the right time. Oh, it's a
Yes.
pain, and you can't sleep with that reefer
Yes.
constantly going off.
Yep.
Oh, it's the
Yeah.
worst.
I was
So,
in refrigerated freight for 2 years. I was a broker.
mm,
So just getting
yeah,
those temps, I used to feel so bad asking people for that data like all the time. Yeah.
yep. It's just I didn't care for it, so I went with a dry van for a long time. Eventually, I found a company that moved fruit parts. I get like stick fruit in a blender and put it in a 1,000-gallon tote. That stuff. Um,
Interesting.
they processed it in Indiana, brought it to the Chobani plant in here in New York. So I got to pass by my kids,
That's
twice every
cool.
run. So that was neat.
Yeah.
But then that the company shut down that division. So alas. Most recently, I was doing LTL, which is basically like
Yeah.
FedEx and UPS, but with a full-size tractor trailer.
Interesting. Very cool. Man, I haven't talked logistics and freight with anybody in like so long. That's very interesting. So, but your passion is more obviously like film and like film editing, right? Didn't you
Mhm.
say you do? Would you ever go into directing? Because I know you made one movie. Did you enjoy the directing process, or is that something that you'd rather be
It
an actor, you'd rather be
it
editor?
was all right. I think I'd probably be best for me if I had the budget for a full crew and whatnot as possibly a producer, executive producer, something like that. I do okay as directing. I don't. I mean, I'm the director for the Comic Con too. I don't have a problem telling people what to do. It's I don't always connect with people very well. It's a emotional translation thing. Like I can perceive how a thing is supposed to feel, but I can't always relate it to the person who's acting.
Got it.
I feel like a director should be able to do that. So I can do it, but I may not be the best for it, if
Are
that
you
follows.
afraid of, like, hurting people's feelings or something?
No, no, I don't
Or
care.
being too direct? Oh, okay. You're like, "I don't
Yeah,
care about feelings." Well,
yeah,
that surprises
I'm an
me.
asshole.
Yeah, you're like, "I'm an asshole." Well, that's honestly surprising to hear because I feel like the minute we got on camera, I felt super comfortable talking to you, but then again, I guess you're not giving me instructions or, like, directing me. Very interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
And did
maybe
you
it's the actress thing that you mentioned. Like you're like,
or
I'm not taking
maybe
direction. Screw you.
I was gonna say maybe it's the fact that I'm a terrible actress. That's why we get along. If I was a good actress, maybe we wouldn't. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's interesting. And so do you see that your kids going in like an artistic direction or are they more geared towards other interests?
Um, well, it's a little mixed. I tried to, help them be as well-rounded as possible. My oldest had the got the theater bug and tried to be involved in as much theatrical production and such as possible. But now they're very much they're studying pharmacy slash biochem. They're
Wow.
going to go work in researching new medicines and like testing them to see if they work and all that kind of stuff. Very cool stuff. But there's no real theater in their area of where they're going to school. They joined a dance team, which is great to
That's
stay
cool.
active and have some artistic expression.
Yeah.
But it's sort of yeah, they're kind of career driven at this point anyway.
Yeah.
Um, my son and my youngest, they draw a lot. My oldest
That's
used to draw a
awesome.
lot, but yeah, but I don't think either one of them wants a career in the arts, partly because they don't want it to be a job,
Yes. Yes. The
which
minute
is
it becomes a
understandable.
job, it stops being enjoyable. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense. And do you draw?
I used to, weirdly, I've had a lot of bad things happen to me over the years.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, I was in the Navy and I took some nerve damage then, and then as a truck driver, you also get some nerve damage.
Yeah.
So I can't hold my hand steady enough to really draw or paint anymore.
Interesting.
Which is one of the reasons I started moving more and more into photography and eventually into video and so forth. It's still disheartening though, because I used to be able to hold
Yeah.
my camera so steady I could take a 30-second exposure of Jupiter at 300 millimeters and see the moon, and I'd hold it dead steady. And now I'm just like, and I have to use a tripod. I mean,
Wow.
the limitations of mortality. Everybody should use a tripod if you want to do a 30-second exposure of Jupiter. But it's just, I used to be able to, and now I can't. I'm like,
It's just like you're like, "I almost wish I never knew that I could do this because then I wouldn't miss it."
mm.
What all jobs have you had? What are
Oh, it's a long list.
any, like,
Um,
totally off the wall ones? I mean, feel free to go
Repossession.
down the list if you want,
Yeah,
Re
probably the biggest icebreaker at parties was repossession. I was a
you were
repo
a repo
agent for
man?
3 years. Yeah, I
That's a
actually got to
long
be the
time.
operations manager of the company there. Um,
That's a
Worked
long
my way
time to
through
be a
up through the
repo
ranks.
man. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow,
it,
and
it
so
was it was a trippy job.
yeah, and so, I get, like, why did you quit? Was that scary? Was it dangerous?
There were times I didn't really feel scared per se. I've had enough shit happen in my life that I've already faced all of my fears. I've lived through the worst that can happen. So nothing really upsets me anymore. But with the exception of worry something will happen to the kids. That's their lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Totally,
yeah,
totally.
you'd never get past that one. Um, but yeah, it never really, like, I've had people pull guns. The thing of it though is that if somebody pulls a gun, they use it immediately, or they're using it to intimidate you and don't intend to use it.
Yeah,
So
that's a
after a
good
few
point.
times, you're just not impressed anymore. You're like,
Right.
yeah, yeah, put that away.
Yeah. One of my favorite TikTokers is she's a repo man. Like she goes and she does like glam repo. Like she's always wearing, 6-inch heels, nice clothes, but she makes it almost like an emotional almost like a therapy type thing. Like she talks to people, she explains what's going on. Like while her team is hooking up their car and dragging it away, she just
Hmm.
like listens to their problems and stuff. It's a weirdly thoughtful and like feelings oriented channel, knowing that she's a repo man. It's very interesting.
I
Yeah.
haven't seen the person, but yeah, there's good reasons for doing that. The company I was with, we won awards in a conference in Nashville put on by what was it? The company's name is
Nashville would have
IR.
a repo convention, wouldn't they?
They would, yes. But we were largest mid-size repossession agency by volume. The way they had it categorized is we had one location with multiple trucks. A small agency has just one truck. A large agency has multiple locations with multiple
Okay.
trucks. Yeah, so
Interesting.
we were largest mid-size by volume. You know, we retrieved several. I think our best year we had over $8 million in asset recovery, which was
Whoa.
pretty cool. But yeah, so we help contribute to the best practices. We never carried weapons because that's only ever going to escalate the situation. You
Totally,
don't want that.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the whole point is everybody goes home at the end of the day. You know, it doesn't
Yes.
matter how much you make if you don't go home. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, and talking to people, helping them through the emotional shock, that helps reduce the risk. Once you can get somebody talking. Oh, the customer service skills, it's even more important than the tow truck skills. Like
That's
you
wild.
get up there, you start relating to them immediately, you get on the same side, you say, listen, I understand these evil banks. You can't trust the evil, but make the bank the enemy,
Trust him.
and you're
Yeah.
both on the same side against them, you know? And then you go through like, listen, if you work with us, you can get your car back in just a couple of days. You just got to call the bank. They'll tell you what you need to do. They don't want to keep your car. They want your loan payment. They can't sell the car for as much as you owe. They want you to have it. But you got to work with them, you know?
Yeah.
All of
Interesting.
that kind of stuff. And yeah, more often than not, they'll hand you the keys so you don't have to drag it up your flatbed.
Wow. And you had to do that every day? Just have
Mhm.
these like emotional conversations with people?
Yeah, well, I mean, not always.
No.
Some people were exceptions. I mean, some just were gonna fight you no matter what you
Oh
do.
yeah, yeah, I
Um,
figure that. Yeah.
and then there's some who are like good riddance. A lot of times divorces. Like we'd pull up to a house, the car's out front, already cleaned out. Come to find out, that was the husband's car. He's out of the picture now, and the wife can't wait to get rid of that stupid thing. You know?
She's like, "Bye. See ya."
Yeah.
Wow. Can you think of like any weird or unexpected stuff you had to repo that you're just like, "Wow, that was odd."
Um. There's been a lot of weird stuff. I think my favorite was another repo truck.
What?
Yeah, there was another company about an hour away from Syracuse. They 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 didn't make payments on their flatbed tow truck, which they used for regular tow truck work and for repos as well. So we went down there, we visited them, we did a courtesy thing. We were like, hey, you know, just to let you know, out of professional courtesy, we have an open file on your tow truck. Get your shit together, or we'll have to come back. You know, we warned them. A month later, nothing had changed. So we went down there. Um, the cool thing about commercial vehicles is that depending on the vehicle, I think this one was, I think it was a Peterbilt. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But there's a lot of commercial vehicles where they only have four different kinds of keys. So if you have all four kinds, you can open any of them. You can start any of them. So I just brought, since we were also, I just brought all four kinds of keys with me. We went down, I started up their truck and off we went with it. And then we used their truck. We used our truck to get the repos, but then we'd bring it back to their truck and load more repos on their truck. So we came back, because there's two of us in a truck, we came back with four cars that night plus the repo truck itself.
And like, surely they can't be mad because they know how it works. They can't be like, "How dare you?" Surely they're like, "I get it. It sucks, but I get it. What you gotta
Yeah,
do?"
yeah, it was yeah, it sucks that it happened, but we did warn them, and also that's how it goes.
That's wild. That takes the cake. I did not expect you to say you repossessed a repo truck. I don't know what other kind of jobs have you had? This is fascinating. I hope you don't mind I'm going down this avenue. I'm just so fascinated. The more I learn about you, the more I learn just in general. There's like so much here to your story.
Oh, well, when you get to my age, there's a lot of life.
I was gonna say you've lived like 10 lives. You're like a cat.
I used to, these days, my personal motto is try not to die. But it
Ah, that's a good
used to
one.
be, yeah, and I find it's helpful, especially
Mm,
with my
you're doing
youngest, who
well.
likes to walk along the edges of cliffs and things. And I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
But I used to say, I could tell you, but you'd never believe it. Because there's so much that you can do in a lifetime. And a lot of people just don't think that's possible to do?
Truly, truly. I have so many stories. I just don't even tell people because I know they wouldn't believe it. Um,
Hmm.
Try me. What's like two things that you're like, I just don't even tell people these because they would never believe it.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's a cumulative people
Yeah.
don't believe thing rather than a thing. Because like any single thing, I was a Schwann's ice cream man for a year. Um, but that's not super unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
somebody's got to do it?
So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Interesting.
before I got my CDL, so I was driving a little truck at the time.
I was gonna say you don't have to have a CDL to work for Schwann's.
No, well, a Class C, but in New
Oh, got it.
York, that's a non-CDL license.
Got it. Interesting. What's a have you ever had a job that you just absolutely hated?
Lots of them.
What's like the worst one where you're just like, you could not pay me enough to go back there and do that again?
Hmm. I got to think back a ways because I've had some jobs that I've absolutely despised, but they're in tight competition. Um, I really didn't like probably auto car carrying, a tractor trailer with the big carry where they put many cars on those things. It wasn't so much the job itself, although that was kind of crazy the way you have to load the cars up. You have to get the car all the way at the end of the trailer. You have to turn it around so you're backing up this ramp, and you have to gun it full speed because you need the momentum to get all the way. If you overshoot it by just a little bit, you go right off the edge of the
Off
truck.
the edge. Yeah, that
Yep.
makes me so driving behind those, watching them unload those makes me so nervous. I don't blame you one
Hmm.
bit. I
But it
don't
wasn't that. It was the boss. It was actually a guy that I'd worked for before. Once he found out I had a Class A, he was like, "Hey, I've got this car hauling gig. Do you want to come drive for me instead of the stupid company you're driving?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll come work for you." Turns out it was his brother who was in charge of the division, who was one of
oh
those
boy.
micromanager people. He was
Anytime
like,
it's
"If
their brother, it's never gonna be good. It's never gonna be good.
exactly. He was like, as if you're in the truck, you're on duty. It doesn't matter if you're officially off duty for log purposes. So, like, I'd do my 10 hours. I'd stop for the night. I'd get in the back and I'd try to call my kids. And he'd have a shit fit. You can't make personal phone calls while you're. I'm like, fuck you. I'm not being paid. I'm paid by the mile. I'm off duty.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Nope. So yeah, that didn't work out. I was like, no, you don't get to tell me I can't talk to my kids.
That's wild. Also, why do they get to police what you do when you're literally in the car? You have to stop. You can't keep going or you get a ticket. Like, what do they expect you to do? Just sit there and twiddle your thumbs? That's
Yeah,
wild.
like, yeah, it was.
I
So
worked
yeah,
at
that
a
was one of the more unpleasant ones.
I worked at Build-A-Bear Workshop for 2.5 years. I'd have to say that's one of the worst jobs I've ever had. Not the worst, but one of the worst, probably. The most the longest I've ever worked at a bad job was Build-A-Bear Workshop. It's pretty terrible. Don't recommend it. Hopefully it's better. This was 2010 to 2012, I believe. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2008 to 2010. I don't know why I said that wrong.
Hmm.
Pretty terrible. Don't recommend it unless you like Build-A-Bears. And even if you do, you won't like them by the time you're done working there. Because I worked at a location in Arkansas and then I transferred up to Navy Pier, Chicago, and I worked at that one for a while. Don't recommend it. Terrible company. I also worked at an Annie Ann's Pretzel, and that was pretty tough. Didn't like that.
A lot of
Okay.
retail facing ones are
Yes.
way overworked, way underpaid, and way more stressed than they really should be.
Yes, yes. Now, surprisingly, Sonic was actually pretty fun. I worked at a Sonic for a few years, and that's
Hmm.
good money if they still do tips. I don't know. It's been like 10 years, but they back when you could make tips there, it was pretty cool. I think they still do. I still tip car hops. Um, oh, somebody's in Arkansas. Jackson Row. Well, that's cool. Um, so in terms of taking your channel and making it kind of more exposed, I think I would say, what would be the most important thing that you would want people to know about you? Or what would the first impression be that you would want to make that's important to you?
Hmm. I don't know. I think probably my main thing is that truth matters, community matters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, okay, I guess to put on my preacher hat, I'm also a minister. That's another unbelievable thing about me. Um,
Really? Wait,
yeah,
how did this just now come up? It's been an hour and a half and you're
because it's
just now.
relevant. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
I have a lot of me, you know.
tell
Um,
more, please.
yeah, so to get a little preachy about it, we hmm. I'm not sure how to put it in the moment, which is weird because I like always seem to be on the verge of a sermon on my own channel. It's it's
That's
very
really funny.
peculiar. But like we care about truth, not necessarily what we want to believe, but what is actually real. It
Yes.
it makes a difference not just in our lives but in everybody's lives. If we took medicine and said, oh well, you know, the germ theory of disease is a heresy, we have to get rid of that, it's actually demons causing sickness, so come to my church and pray. There's a motherfucker out there, Greg Locke. You've probably heard of him. He's one of the evangelical
Yes.
guys who's leading the new charge, the
Yes.
Kenneth Copeland Minion group.
Yes.
He's actually said on his live streams, um, people tell you, you know, you need to see a therapist or you need medication or you need no, what you need is to get in the proper way of churching. You need to come down here and be delivered of your demons. And I'm like, this motherfucker is telling people, forget medicine. It's demons. Come see me to get your demons out.
For a low,
It's
low
harmful.
price, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all fame, it's all, you know, fortune. And he's getting really, really, really rich. Like he's
I'm
an executive
sure.
producer. He just put out a movie of his own with all the other demon related pastors and oh
There's a
they're just
lot
going
more
hog wild with it.
demon-related pastors. I know, you know,
It's
I'm
a
not surprised by
thing
that at all,
now.
actually. I'm actually not
Yeah,
surprised by that. That's
it's
and
like
what I've
the
never
latest
understood
revival thing,
what I've never understood is why it's so difficult for so many people to think even like, let's just say I'm a Christian. Why is it difficult to believe as a Christian that God wants you to go visit therapists and that's why therapists exist. Like God provided them the skills they need in order to help you treat your mental illness. I've never understood that. Why does medicine never get attributed to God? Why could God not have created the vaccine and given it to us to save us from COVID? I don't understand why the good things that we're doing and technology and medicine and education, why that can never be attributed to God. It always has to be no, no, homeopathy only, except their version of homeopathy is not actual homeopathy. It's like
right?
essential oils from doTERRA that they keep feeding their kids and wondering why their hair's falling out. Why do you
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that is?
that drives me bloody crazy too. But medicine, God gets the credit for medicine when it works.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
you know, you
yes,
pray and you pray and you pray. The doctor performs a surgery to remove an inflamed appendix, and it's, oh, praise God.
yes,
God did this wonderful thing.
yes.
Um,
I don't know if you've ever talked to Dr. Ben, but he told me that same thing. He's like, the tough part about being a doctor is when it goes right, it's thank God. When it goes wrong, it's I get sued. It's my fault.
I've seen Dr. Ben around. I think we may have played Cards Against Humanity or something at some point.
I believe that.
Yeah, yeah, he gets around too, almost as much
Yes.
as SR. But
Yes.
yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. I'd
Yeah.
like to spend more time with him and you know also the others in the community too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. SR lives
yeah,
here in Tennessee.
it's the kind of thing that's always bugged me. Like I've never been into football. Like I don't. I'm not the kind of nerd who hates all sports. I just don't like watching sports.
Yes.
Games are to be played, not watched, you know?
Yes.
Uh,
I'm the same way. Like, do your thing, do have your sports love. Great. Please don't ask me to go watch one. Please don't ask me to watch a game. I will not have a good time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I noticed family Thanksgivings, the uncles would always watch whatever football game was on. And whenever you score a touchdown, it's praise God. Well, maybe God should be getting the giant paychecks instead of the players. If the players are just completely irrelevant, it's all God's will. I'm like, why are people like this? It doesn't, I understand now, um, because one of the things I do is, on R and Ra's channel, they do the Blasphemous Bible, it's actually Bible study. They have like, Aaron's
That's
got a few
fantastic.
different experts, native Hebrew speaker and a Bible lore person, Lawrence from Milwaukee Atheist, who studies the hell out of this stuff, etc. And so we're like we're going through the Bible chapter by chapter and learning what it actually said
Which I think is
before
wonderful.
people got all crazy with it.
Yes.
And so I understand now that the reason people do that, why they thank God instead of their doctors, why they thank God instead of their teammates or whatever, is because they're terrified of blaspheming.
Mm.
Biblical blasphemy is when you give credit that belongs to God to something else. They'd rather give God credit he doesn't deserve than give God's credit to an earthly agency and end up being the most damned you can possibly be.
That's wild. I can't imagine being like, thank me for everything, but also appreciate everything I've done for you. But if you don't give me credit for all of those things, you give the wrong thing credit, you're still in trouble. That's like,
Hmm.
that's just wild. And also, something I don't understand is usually before a football game, both teams pray. So when one wins and they're like, see, God was with us, what does the other one think? I've always wanted to know what the other one thinks about that. They never ask him that in the post game interview they have to go to. Like, why didn't God help
Hmm.
you? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it's like that with every war, every political campaign, city mayors, all of it. God's on our side. I know we're going to win. Well, somebody's going to lose, right?
Right.
And
Right.
they all just have like this weird double think, cognitive dissonance, Texas sharpshooter thing going on. Like when their wishes happen to come true by coincidence, chance, or heaven forbid, actually trying, then it's God. But if it doesn't, well, sometimes the answer to your prayer is no. Or it drives me crazy.
That's the other thing is like God he gets all the credit when things go right, but when things go wrong, nobody is allowed to be upset. They just have to accept that that's what their journey was, or like that was the path for them. And I wish that people treated me like that. I wish that they praised me for all the things I'm wonderful at, and that when I fail them mercilessly, they say, "Well, you know what? It wasn't in the cards for me to have you do that properly, the right way."
What if we all like treated other humans that way? Like, that stand up that you just did, that was magnificent, that was divine. But that reading for that part in that show, well, it just, not everybody can be good at everything.
Right,
It's
right.
cool. Yeah.
I feel like that is how I used to describe all of my awful exes. It's like, when it's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's just it wasn't meant to, not everyone likes those things. Like, it just it just wasn't it's not what it looks like. It just wasn't I wasn't meant to be with somebody who allows me to live my best life. I'm just supposed to be with this other person. They're teaching me a lesson. Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, that always. I understand humans are vulnerable to that kind of thinking, but the way it's actively promoted in, not all religious circles, but a lot of the more fundamentalist ones, is really, really disturbing. I've
Yes.
had somebody. I don't think it was my chat. I think I was on somebody else's channel. I honestly can't keep track because if I'm not on my channel, I'm on somebody else's. Um, but he was in the chat saying something along the lines of every horrible thing that happens to you, whether it's assault or the other kind of assault, or it's a gift from God. It's a lesson for you, and you should be grateful. And I'm like,
Interesting.
fuck you and fuck your God,
Yeah.
because that's horrible.
That's terrible. It's terrible. And also, I would love to see I wouldn't love to see. Let me rephrase it. I would not want this to happen, but I would be curious to see what their opinion would be if that were to happen to them. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
easy in a world where your gender kind of dominates every space that it's in to say, "Oh, assault, that's just something that you're supposed to learn from." It's like, spoken like somebody who's never had to worry about being assaulted, just existing in the world. It's very interesting. I have a lot
Hmm.
of conversations with my boyfriend about the experiences that are so different for men and women. Like, he loves being outdoors, he loves going hiking, he loves doing all that stuff. And every once in a while, he'll have an experience where he's like, I never considered what you're talking about right now. Like I never considered how dark it is, mattering in any way other than, falling off the trail. I've never worried about so many different things. And so a lot of times we'll sit down and we'll talk about our parallel experiences. And it's just so interesting to hear the experiences of a 6'1" white guy versus like a 5'1" woman just walking around in the same city. And he's from Chicago as well. We didn't know each other there. Everybody thinks we moved here together, totally by chance. But yeah, it's so interesting to hear his perspective on what is a problem or what is a danger versus my perspective. And I think I heard a statistic recently that was talking about fears between genders, and I think it was mentioned like women's number one fear when they polled people was being killed by a man, and a man's number one fear when they polled people was like being robbed or something like that, being murdered by a stranger trying to rob them. It's so interesting the and I don't think anybody is at fault for that either. Like, I don't fault men for having a different experience. I don't fault people who have not lived in my shoes for not experiencing what I've experienced, but it does make me much more aware of or at least wanting to be curious about, say, for example, like the trans experience, because I know that there's an entire existence there that is a third different experience than what I've experienced, than what my cis partner has experienced. And I said all that to say I wish that religions and political parties and things that people use to identify themselves, I wish they had that same curiosity. I wish instead of saying anybody who identifies this way is bad, anybody who experiences this is lying, anytime that anything happens to you, it's because you displease God. I don't know. I can't fathom living in a world where I wouldn't at least want to know what it is that I'm arguing against. I wouldn't at least want to sit down and talk to somebody before passing a law against them. But I guess I don't know. Maybe that's too much to ask. I don't know. It's just
No,
so
I
interesting.
very much get that. I was always interested by other people's experiences when I was little. That's one of the ways I wound up being a minister is because people started coming to me and using me like a default school counselor because our school didn't have a proper counselor.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I heard a lot of people's tales, and I'm like, it's really interesting how you experience life this way, and I experience it this way, and another person, you don't want to tell other people's stories, but you could say another person I spoke to experiences life this way, and
yeah.
it really adds a lot of perspective.
It does.
And
It
then you've
does.
got the people who are like, well, this is what it's like for me, therefore this is what it's like for everyone. And
Yeah.
anyone who says otherwise is just lying or scamming you or whatever.
Mhm.
The 6'8" basketball player who says, I can slam dunk a basketball, therefore everyone can, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
and also noticed one side of the coin, and I'm not using labels, but one side of the coin is like we want medical care for people. We want more affordable education. We want it's all about what they want to implement for people. And the other side of the coin I've noticed is very much we want people to stop this. We want people to stop that. We want to ban this. We want to ban that. And it's so interesting to go down the list and just see that like one group is very much about we want everyone to be able to experience the same things, and the other group is so much about if we don't get to experience it, that makes it wrong. How dare you? I don't want you to experience it. And I can't fathom how that would ever benefit a society, how that would ever how does that provide progress in any way if all you're doing is focusing on banning things and all you're doing is making sure that the status quo remains the same? I don't want to live in a world that doesn't get better the longer I'm in it.
Yeah, that's sort of the goal. Is like we have a limited amount of time here. We want to make it better than how we found it because
Yeah.
that's the only real legacy a person can leave. But the culture war thing, that's one of the reasons that I find religion so harmful because
Hmm.
the people who disable their critical thinking just a little bit just to buy into this, they're easier for the people who have nefarious intent to manipulate. And they
Yes.
tell them from the pulpit, this group of people are sinners and they're wicked and they're spreading their terrible ideology that's going to infect your children. It's culture war bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that, according to the Bible, a Christian should be concerned about. It's not a thing. Like, who cares what other people are doing with their lives? If your children see other people living life a different way, and your beliefs aren't rigorous enough to withstand that, then maybe your beliefs shouldn't be carried on. But that's a
Yeah.
whole other thing. It's
Yeah.
entirely because on the one side, we've got people saying that everyone deserves health care, everyone deserves access to education. And then to counter that, we've got ad hominem attacks by the zombie-minded masses who are being sicked on us from the people who are in charge, puppet mastering the whole thing, who are like tax breaks for corporations, no environmental controls. That's the real game. It's us versus them to keep us
Yes.
distracted so we can't deal with the real problems.
Yes. Yes, 100%. And it's, 6, 8 years ago, I would have been like, "I don't know." But modern day is like a giant conspiracy. Like, even the truth, even when you
Hmm.
find the truth, you feel like a conspiracy theorist. Um,
I know. I
and
still
it's
feel like a conspiracy theorist, but
right.
they're not even hiding it anymore. Like
No.
they just brazenly, openly state it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
their minions are so locked into their control mechanisms, which
Yes.
includes religion, that
Yep.
they don't even they don't. Not only do they not think about it, they don't even think about thinking about it. They just keep
Yeah.
ditto heading what Rush Limbaugh and Tucker Carlson tell them to think.
Yes, and on the rare occasion that you have somebody that does think about it, they've already been told, if you think that way, that's the devil creeping into your brain, that's, bad
Hmm.
influence. They not only do they spend all this time indoctrinating people into these ideologies, but then they make sure to say also, if there's even a part of you who questions any of this, be careful. Like, it's your problem. You're not praying enough, or you're not devout enough, or you're not.
Learn to doubt the doubt.
Yes. Yes.
It's
And
an actual thing that they train people in, and it's
doubt the
fucking
doubt.
and in
Yes.
fairness, that's not a problem with Christianity or religion in
No.
general. That's an abuse of religion to take advantage of
Yes.
people.
Yes. And
These are
that same
parasites that are infecting these religions. But
right.
the religions make it possible for them to do that.
Yes, exactly. And you could argue all day that other groups that aren't even religious have that exact same way of getting people.
Hmm.
There are so many social groups that use that same um tactic, I suppose, to keep people involved. The only difference is we're talking about people's eternal salvation. Like, it is damaging. It's more damaging than a bad fraternity. It's more damaging, it's more lasting than these other groups. And Mark Caesar brought up a good point. He said, "Does that speak to know your fears before you let them consume you?" I've always thought that people fear what they don't know, right? For example, when I was a little kid, my dad, my stepdad, taught me how to use a gun. He taught me how to load it. He taught me what it looks like. Because he wanted me to know how it worked so that I wouldn't get curious and mess around with it. He's like, "This is how it works. And if I ever see you touching it, I'm going to beat your ass. But this is how it works," right? Like, this, you can't. The only thing more dangerous than a gun in an unlocked cabinet is a gun that you don't even know how it works in an unlocked cabinet. So he showed me how it worked and he made it clear. And I was more afraid of what he would do to me if he caught me using it than what it did, because I was no longer, it wasn't a mystery to me. And I think a lot of times these people that are hyper religious, and I hate that it ties so much into it, but a lot of times people who are hyper religious are also hyper conservative on like a political spectrum. I think so much of what keeps these religions and these political groups going is that fear of the unknown. If you tell anyone who's trans that they're a bad person, they don't go here, we don't allow trans people in this church, there's probably somebody statistically that you know who's trans, but they're not going to say anything. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to make it known. And nobody's going to think they know anybody who's trans. So they're going to continue to fear this idea when in reality, they've probably known trans people this whole time. And it's not been an issue at all. It's never been a problem. Everybody minds their own business. And it's like kind of like that don't say gay, right? Like you think by banning things you're banning them, but all you're doing is keeping the people they apply to from making themselves known, I suppose. And people
Mm-hmm.
just they spend so much time fearing things that they don't understand, where if they got to understand it, they would recognize it's not something to be scared of at all.
Yeah, it's a don't say gay is fundamentally no different from the Navy's don't ask, don't tell policy. It didn't
Same
keep
thing.
people from being gay. It just kept people from being open about who they are. It made them be dishonest.
Yeah, yeah, and then you've got shows like MASH, where it's like, "Oh, haha, he's dressing up like a girl so he can get out of the military," and that's people start to think that's what that means. They're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
so that's just cross-dressing. That's what that means to be gay." And no, that's not what it means. It's just wild. It's wild how hard people will work to make sure they don't learn about anything that they don't like. But how can you know if you don't like it if you've never thought about it, learned about it, looked it up? It's just bizarre to me, but maybe that makes me the outlier. Maybe that's why I'm the horrible liberal.
Yep.
Just
Yeah, because you dare to question what everyone has been taught since
right.
birth and whatnot. But yeah, it's fundamentally not significantly different from racism. Like little kids, black kids, white kids, and Asian kids, they all play together, no problem, no one cares. But then they get into the third or fourth grade, middle school, all that stuff, and they learn, or their parents are those people with different skin tones, or her, and they learn to hate.
Yep.
But if they're around people, if they're in a diverse environment, when they're exposed to that infectious hate, then they can say, no, I know a brown skinned person, I know a black skinned person, I know someone from actual fucking Africa. None of the shit you're saying is true. They can see the bullshit for what it is. It's only when they're not exposed, when they're isolated from those environments, and it's the difference is with race, you can't hide your skin color. It's
Right.
right out there for everyone to see.
Yep.
But it's not really different from orientation or identity or even religion. It's part of who you are in this moment.
Yeah.
It's just sometimes you have to ask to find out.
Yeah. Also, I've always thought that actual belief, like to truly say you believe something, means that you've been exposed to the opposite ideas. You've been exposed to the opposite arguments of whatever it is that you supposedly believe. You've been allowed to do your research. You've been allowed to look it up. You've been allowed to get any question you've ever had answered or at least pursue it. And at the end of the day, you say, you know what? I've been met with all this stuff, and I still think that that first thing is where I belong. That to me, that's belief. But when these groups eliminate your ability to look up any other answers, to look up what else is out there, to look up other options, to
Mhm.
engage with people of different cultures and values, that's when I don't think that's real belief. I would say that the belief everybody thinks they have in their religion is just fear. It's fear of the unknown, fear of going to hell, fear of being rejected by the group for asking reasonable questions.
Mhm.
And I don't understand how so many people don't see that. Nobody, well, I get it because like nobody wants to say, yeah, I'm run by fear, 100%. Yeah, I'm willing to admit it. Um,
Oh yeah, they all want to have that whole, oh, God makes me brave. I'm not only strong, I'm stronger than you because I have God on my side and all that crap. But yeah, I saw that even in elementary school. I've mentioned previously on other shows that I was the only kid in my elementary school who didn't participate in the church school program. So I had to stay behind, and the other kids would be like, no, you should come with us and not, not be, the loser who gets left behind and all that crap.
Oh
But
God,
some of
left
the other
behind.
kids, I'd look at, because I wasn't invested in any particular religion, I'd look up other religions. I'd be like, oh, what's Buddhism all about? What's going on here? And the Shinto thing, this seems interesting. And all of this various stuff. And when I talk to the other kids about it, they're completely clueless. That sometimes they deny facts that you could show in the kids' encyclopedia. They'd be like, no, that's not true. Jesus is the only God. No, it really not. Other people have other ideas. And if your ideas were true, they should be able to stand up to scrutiny. If you're afraid to learn
Yes.
about anything else
Yes.
because you think your worldview is going to fall apart,
Yes.
maybe that worldview is not really very strong.
Yes. Yes. And it always shocks people. One of the first questions I get when people find out I'm an atheist is they say, like, well, what if tomorrow science proved that God's real? And I'm like, I'd believe it. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, if science proved it, if I'd have questions, I wouldn't be happy about it, but I would believe it if that's what science said. And like this concept that you're willing to admit when you're incorrect just like shocks people
Mhm.
sometimes, just utterly shocks them. They're like, no, this is the part where you're supposed to double down and insist that no matter what, you would stay the same. And you're like, why would you want to do that? Why would you
Yeah,
want to do that? Like,
yeah.
there's a
Growth
joy.
is part of life.
Yes, there's a joy and a delight in being proven wrong, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
in
because
my
then you get to
opinion.
learn more.
Yes,
Why do
yes,
people not understand? I don't, I don't,
yes,
I don't understand humans. I've
yeah.
never
I,
understood
I
humans.
don't, I don't understand. One of my favorite things is when people say something and I'm like, no shit, and they're like, yeah, and I look it up and I'm like, but that is right. I had no idea. That's great.
Hmm.
Yes, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it does, depending on who's proving you wrong. There are people that it bothers me a little bit more than other people. But like there is just a delightful joy in being able to find out that something you thought, like, why would you not want to stop thinking something that's wrong? Why would you not want to be like, oh, thank God that you told me the truth because I was just walking around spewing this stuff like it was, reality.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah. No,
soapbox.
you don't want to. You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to look like an incompetent person who doesn't bother to, check up on anything. But everybody can make mistakes. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I don't know. That's another one. That's a big difference between theists and agnostics. Is not all theists, obviously, but the ones who are like really vocal about it. Well,
Yes.
my book explains everything. I have the answers to everything.
Nope.
Well, when you pretend to have all the answers, you stop looking for the real answers. And
Yes.
that's sort of the thing. It's like they say, well, you can't explain how the universe got here. You can't explain how evolution started. I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, I'm good with that. Like, we would like to learn more about it rather
Yes.
than just make shit up and call it a day, you know?
Yeah, yes, yes, absolutely, 100%. It's this idea where you're like, I I don't know everything. I and also, you said you don't wanna look stupid. Maybe if you're like me and you just get, like, a dumb haircut and you already look stupid, then you've covered your bases, so no matter what, you're gonna look stupid, so you don't mind looking a little bit more I don't know. But, like, there
I get
is
dumb
a
haircuts from time to time. My
I
my
I
kids,
accidentally
I shave my head twice a year because I'm like I used to have really long hair, like really long hair, and it took forever to wash it and shampoo it and whatnot. And then when I joined the Navy, I had to have short hair, so I just zoop, and so twice a year I just zoop, and my kids hate it. They go, "You look so dumb. You look like a thumb."
I accidentally shaved my head back in March or May, one of the M months. And so this is like the
Hmm.
grown out version. I think I'm keeping it for a while, but oh boy, YouTube had comments the first time that I posted a video without my long red hair. They were like, "What have you done? You are horrible and ugly now. Like no man will ever accept your hand in marriage." Um,
Oh
but my
yes,
dad has a lot of
that's the
ghosts.
whole that's the milestone marker right there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Ember, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been a really wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that we got to touch base. I so appreciate that video that you made. You said some of the kindest things about my content, and I wanted to make sure that even my audience, if they didn't already follow you, knew that you existed and knew about your content because I just think your mission is just fantastic. Just your ability to bring together communities and just really highlight other creators. I think you do a wonderful job of showing that there is so much room at the top. Just because somebody else is doing well doesn't mean you're not doing well. It is possible to say, hey, this is a creator who's doing well, I'm happy for them. And to also say, go to Ember's channel, you know, come to my channel, but also go to Ember's channel, he's a great guy, you know. And so it's like, I think that you're just doing a wonderful, wonderful work. And I apologize. I realized I just misgendered you. I did not mean to do that. I apologize.
Like I said, that's why I have the any on the end, because
Yeah.
it happens, and I don't want
Yeah.
people to feel bad when it. Yeah.
But again, I think that's an example of how like people, we learn and we change and we grow, and I'm still learning about those sorts of things. And I think as long as people like you are still out here just spreading the joy, spreading the love, and spreading the ability to really just bring communities together and uplift each other, I think it's gonna be a great time. Yeah, there we go. Excellent, excellent. So I said all that to say, that diatribe to say thanks for being here and agreeing to be on my channel and for doing what you do.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a really really fun conversation. English is hard.
It is hard. It is hard.
Yeah, but yeah,
And
it's definitely really cool to meet you, to get to chat with you, and I think the conversation itself has been really productive.
thank you. Thank you. And anybody who's watching from my channel, I've posted Ember's channel in the comments. And anybody who's watching from Ember's channel, thank you for linking with me. I encourage you to come visit mine, and we'll talk to you
Mhm.
soon.